Mr. Mayor, I've been waiting to have you on for a while. I'm happy that you were able to take up our offer and come on the show and kind of talk a little bit about yourself and what we're going to see, because I think you still have another 2 years left.
Yes.
So what are some things that we can be looking forward to in the next 2 years? And tell us a little bit about yourself, because I think that there's a lot of people that are our listeners that don't actually know your background, your history, how you even came here. And so lay it all out there.
Well, thank you, Ron, for the invitation. Certainly excited to be on the show, and thank you for the opportunity to come on and share my thoughts with you in regards to the city of Lynn Haven. So I'm Jesse Nelson, originally from Alabama. Lived there the first 30 years of my life, and as a pastor, sometimes we move to different locations as part of ministry. And so ministry brought me to Panama City. I'm the pastor of Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church on MLK right before you get to Bay Medical. And so I've been there since 2014. So that's what brought me to the panhandle of Florida. And we've been living in the Lynn Haven area since we've moved here. And so it's been a great place to live, great place to raise my family. After Hurricane Michael, like other families that were transplants here initially, we could have moved away. But we really, loved the environment that we were living in. We really loved the city, and just wanted our kids to have a great and safe place to live, as well as, we like the education system that they were part of. My children have grown up in the Bay Haven, North Bay Haven schools. And then my daughter, she's also going to Holy Nativity. Now she's a senior at Mosley High School, and my son's a seventh grader at Bay Haven Middle School Academy. And so we wanted our kids to stay integrated within those school systems here in Bay County, as well as continue to have relationships with their friends. And so we thought that was really important for them after the hurricane to come back and have some stability. And we could have moved to any other city in Bay County, but we decided we wanted to come back to Lynn Haven. And so we've planted ourselves here in Lynn Haven. I've purchased a home here, enjoy my neighbors that are around me there in the Mood Highlands area. I have a great neighbor next door, Jason. And so he's a wonderful guy that is always a great helping hand for my family, especially when I'm out of town. So that's sort of, what got me here, what brought me here. And since being here, I've tried to, as a pastor and even as just a everyday citizen, plant myself into the community through service. And so I'm on the board of Anchorage Children's Home. I've been serving on that board since I've been pastor here in Bay County. There's a few other boards that I've had the opportunity to serve on, Salvation Army, also the Judicial 14th Circuit, in regards to working with teen violence and such. I've been able to be a part of that task force as well. I'm also right now working with Cornerstone Trust. I'm one of the instructors and members for that board. And essentially that's a board that provides minority microloans to minority businesses in the Bay County area. And so we've been able to award over $80,000 in microloans. And so we've been in partnership with a community bank as well as some other business owners as well to really help fund that program. And so that's been great to be a part of that. Our church, we do a twice a month food pantry. And so just really trying to get out and help serve those that are in our community that need us the most. And I know some have asked, why did you run for mayor? After Hurricane Michael, seeing the things that happened within our city, thought it was really important for us to try to really rebuild our reputation and really get us back into a place where we could have public trust. And so I was hoping that with my background in pastoral ministry, background in community service here locally, that I could sort of be the liaison for that I could be sort of a lead for that. And it was a lot of work to rebuild that public trust, not just in the local Lynn Haven area, but even working with our state and federal officials as well, because there was some trust that was lost in our system here in Lynn Haven. But I think we're on a great place. We're on a great pace now. We're in a great place where we are in contact with our state and federal officials on a regular basis. And so we have a good working relationship with them, that if we need something, we can call and get a quick response about that instead of just being ignored. And so it's taken a lot of hard work to make several trips back and forth to Tallahassee and go down to the county building and meet with Congressman Dunn's office in order to reestablish those relationships, but to show that Lynn Haven, that we are serious about trying to continue to be the best city in the Bay County area.
And I think we are. We're winning in a lot of areas right now. I don't know if you said it throughout that entire resume, but I mean, um, our safety rating, I think we've come back down like another 14%, right? Crime rate has come down 14% over this past year, and it was lower last year as well. And it's consistently going down. We are consistently getting out of debt. Um, and we can thank Miss Vicky for that as far as the
Yeah.
manager. She didn't get enough credit for what she has done. I think there was a thing that Jonathan Hayes just said when he was on here the other day. He says, we like to judge people by their faults, and then we only
Mm.
judge ourselves by our like greatest achievements type thing. And so
Yeah.
I think that's what happens there with that. But getting back to the public trust, since how that was kind of like one of the things that you brought up, and we can just knock out the drama first. Um, Gaining public trust after something that we saw in Lynn Haven, where the mayor, gets popped for a felony for, lying to the FBI, and then finding out that the city manager was stealing and all of this. Coming in as the mayor after something like that, how difficult is it to gain the public's trust back? I mean, I know you've been able to see it, and I think that it's kind of come down a little bit. But what are your thoughts on that, and how have you guys been able to achieve that so far?
I think one of the keys, and oftentimes this is a cliche term, but it is transparency. It is letting the community know that we do want you to come in. We want your input, that we're opening our books to you to come and see what we're actually doing. So, for example, when it came to us during our budget season, so we intentionally have several workshops, public workshops, so that our community can come in and ask whatever questions they need to ask during that time. So, although we as the commission, we sit up and we ask different questions of our finance director, there is a period of time where we say, hey, you can please come up with your questions, and you can go to a particular line item and ask us specifically about that you can ask about your money, because this is your money.
Yeah.
And so we're wanted to make sure that we had an open door policy for our citizens. And so one of those things, again, was having those public workshops. Also, I initiated certain town halls. So, for example, our city manager has table talk, where she has a moment, tries to do it once a month when the schedule is available, to allow citizens to come in and ask questions about particular issues that are going on in the community, provide insight from different staff members as to what we're trying to work on, what are our goals, and what we're trying to achieve according to our strategic plan. And so that's another opportunity to engage with the community. So I think there's that transparency, then there's also that community engagement, where we're wanting to engage with the community. And so I think the various public events that we've been having, spring concert series, the other things we've been able to add, Winter Wonderland, food truck festival, to let the community know that we're still a community.
Mhm.
And so you have that transparency with that community engagement. And so I think that is important, that you're not trying to skirt around people's questions, but you are being open and saying, this is what we have. And if you don't know, then you say, hey, I don't know, but I'll try to follow back up with you. And so I've had several meetings with citizens over the past, now with it being 4 years, because I was elected in May 18, 2021. And so over the past 4 years, I've had numerous meetings with several citizens in order to provide clarity on different questions that they do have about whatever they were concerned about that was going on in our city. And so I think that's important, just letting people know that we don't have anything to hide, that it's available for you to see, and that we want you to be involved. And then we establish a couple of committees as well. So, for example, the Charter Review Committee, letting others know that we want input from the citizens on how do you want us to run our government, right? And then also we established what initially was a debt review committee, because that was a big concern 4 years ago, was what are we doing with our money? How much debt are we in? And so we, as a commission, selected 5 citizens in order to be a part of that committee. And they've been in operation now for the past 4 years. And so they converted from a debt review committee to a financial review committee. And so they also get an opportunity to look over the budget. Anything that we talk about that's going to be significantly impactful to our citizens from a financial perspective, like the water rates. Even now we're talking about stormwater assessment, where the finance review committee they get a chance to preview that as well, and then give us their input on that. So I think that's one of the ways in order to rebuild that public trust, is letting the public know that we want your input, and we're going to actually use your input, not just as a just a passive way of saying, "Oh, hey, give us your input," and no, we're not going to really pay attention to you. No, we really want to receive your input and take you seriously. So I think the transparency, the community engagement, and then just opening opportunities for there to be communication from the community to us as well. And so I think sometimes we intentionally go above and beyond to ensure that we're getting the community's input to try to rebuild that public trust, that we really want to know what our community thinks, whether they agree with something that we're doing or not agreeing with something that we're doing, we still want to know.
Yeah, I find that interesting because, and I'm sure you know, and kind of make it a question because the people that come and speak at public commentary and that show frustration and how things that things that the city are doing that they don't necessarily agree with, how many of those people actually show up to the workshops to figure this stuff out as far as the budget and things like that? Because I've been to the meetings. I'll come to a regular meeting. It's chaos. And I brought, the last time I went to a city meeting, I took my son with me. And it's really, really, it's a difficult thing for me to look at my wife and be like, I never want to go back to another City of Lynn Haven meeting because of chaos that breaks loose in one of these. And I actually have a thought on that I've run by several city commissioners, and then people that are also running. I have an idea on that. The public commentary. We've seen it, again, it's one of those things where if I can't take my kids because I don't want to sit there for an hour and a half just hearing the same regurgitation of information.
Yeah.
And then it's the same thing that people have been screaming over. And I mean, I get it. If it's important to you, it's important to you. But like I suggested to Sam Peebles, and I brought it up to Jamie Warrick. He actually liked the idea. And then I brought it up to Jeff Schneider, who's running. But I said, I think it would be extremely beneficial to have public commentary on a separate night. Public commentary, you have your own night, right? Where you can come up there, and I don't think that it should be mandatory for commissioners to be there. If the commissioner cares enough to be there, he'll be there. Yeah. But like when I go to a meeting, to a Lynn Haven meeting, I want to know what you guys are deciding on, and I want to see what's being voted on. I hear the ins and outs from budgets, things like that. But I don't want to go up there and hear freaking 35 minutes of why Ricky Ramy's a bad guy and why Vicky Gaynor should be fired.
Gotcha.
I mean, I don't. If that's somebody's opinion, I get it. But it's that whole thing of like, this is the same thing that has happened over and over and over again. I even went as far, I've said, don't publicize it. It seems like, so I look at it as an active shooter thing. One of the major things that this nation has failed at, right? You have a massive shooter that goes in and shoots up a school. And then the news media is all over it. They post his face, his name.
Yeah.
And because of that type of mentality of the type of person that would do something like that, they look at it as like this, is clout the right word? Or I could become famous if I go do this.
Yeah.
So then the same thing happens, right? You get people in there. Now, relating it to Lynn Haven, you get people that are in there that are like, oh, well, I'm going to be up on, TV. I'm going to be, everybody's going to see what I have to say about this particular thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, public commentary is supposed to be you voicing your opinion to the commission that is up there so something can be done about something, not so you can use it as a way to put yourself out there and become YouTube famous or Bernie Thompson famous. So it's like, have it on a separate night. And I guarantee you, if you had it on a separate night, and you didn't publicize it, and you didn't show up on YouTube, nope. You would have the people in the community that care to see change show up. But the peanut gallery isn't going to show up. I'll just show up with their phones or whatever, and nobody's going to care about the 119 people that watches it. But the thing about it is, it's like, I feel like it's been glorified over the past year, 2 years, where people come in there and they turn it into a complete circus, and it makes it hard for you guys to do your job and get to the actual things that freaking matter. So I'm done with the public comment, but my question is what do you think about having it on a separate night?
Haven't thought about that. I mean, that's definitely an interesting approach to it.
Yeah.
So that would be something to consider.
Yeah, because there's nothing in the charter that's against it.
Correct.
I looked it over and I was like, just do that. I'll still show up to public commentary just because, I might want to listen to what people have to say. But I feel like it takes away from it whenever that stuff just goes out and goes viral and all that dumb stuff. So let's talk a little bit about what has been the biggest hurdle so far since you've taken over as mayor.
I think the biggest hurdle so far has been one, the rebuild. That has been a huge hurdle because you're trying to rebuild a city while also maintaining the status quo of what you need to provide the best services to the city. So that has been a huge hurdle because when I came into the throes of the rebuild. Matter of fact, the day after my election, so I was elected on a Tuesday night. That Wednesday morning, I'm out at the groundbreaking for our new City Hall. And so I went right into that project along with our city manager and other staff. And primarily is just trying to stay on top of things when it came to FEMA and making those connections. And so that was a difficult time, coming into the rebuild while also trying to maintain that status quo and offer the best services that we could provide. And I also think, again, the other challenge, which we just already spoke about, was rebuilding that public trust where people really can put confidence back in government, in local government, to be able to know that we're doing what we said we're going to do. And I think, that's critical for rebuilding that public trust is if this is what we said we're going to do, then we actually do it. Now you can rebuild that confidence in us to know that we're doing what we said. And I think that's what we've really been attempting to do as a commission is to work along with city staff and the city manager to ensure that we have a strategic plan in place. And now we start doing what we said we're going to do. For example, with stormwater, when I came in, that was a huge hurdle. Was stormwater. Of course, I live in Lynn Haven. I know we had some drainage issues.
What part of Lynn Haven do you live in?
I live in Mold Highlands.
Okay. Yeah.
So I live in Mold Highlands, and so I knew we had some drainage issues in Lynn Haven. But for example, I was not, whenever it rains, I was not driving before becoming mayor. Whenever it would rain, I wouldn't drive around to see how was the drainage in our city, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'll never forget when Tropical Storm Fred came through in August of 2021. There was an hour and a half public comments on Tropical Storm Fred for stormwater. 90 minutes we sat there and listened to people give us their concerns, their complaints. Very valid. So not saying that, what they said was invalid, but it was like, wow, this is a real serious issue and we have to do something about it. Like it was on the chart. It was on my, my priorities to address stormwater. But certainly after sitting there for an hour and a half, the very next morning I went and met with the city manager. I met with Mr. Chris Lightfoot and we sat down and we said, okay, we have a stormwater master plan. We have to start working at implementing this. And so stormwater was another huge hurdle that we had to overcome. But I think we have a plan in place now, or we've been able to enact the plan that was already in place. The plan was created back in 2017 and 2019, but now we've been able to enact that plan. And so that it was very difficult to implement that assessment because we had a lot of people that said, don't do it, right? And so sometimes, when you get this overwhelming resounding no from the community saying, no, we don't want this, then we as a commission had to say, well, but we want this for you, not the assessment, but we want better stormwater. We want to improve stormwater for you. And as of right now, that was the best option that we were given on how to help improve stormwater. And so I think since that time, we've been able to work on that diligently. So that was a huge hurdle, was working with that. Of course, we had our debt. That was another hurdle. And then sitting down and understanding, where is this debt? How much of this debt is belonging to, Hurricane Michael and the rebuild? How much of this debt did we have prior to the hurricane? And then is this the general fund debt, or is this debt that is tied to a particular department such as sewage or utilities? And so sitting down and trying to understand how the makeup of our debt. But our debt review committee did a great job of coming in assessing that, and is also giving us recommendations. And as you mentioned earlier, I think we've done a great job of being able to attack that debt and pay that debt down. Yeah. And so Recently, we've just paid off another $4 million loan, which then has taken our debt from being extended to 2047. We cut that loan off by 20 years. That was supposed to be a 30-year note, but we paid it off in 10, or really less than 10.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we're aggressively attacking our debt while at the same time being able to continue to offer great services, to our citizens. And so that's the balance that we're trying to have. Is we still want to be able to have a great family friendly city, but at the same time be fiscally conservative. And so I think our city manager has done a very good job of being fiscally conservative. And I can just tell you from being around City Hall and listening to the different department heads, if there's anything that they complain about, it's the fact that she is so tight on the budget, that we're not just frivolously spending money, but that we are spending money where it's needed, or having to wait until the next year until, that rolls over and the budget is renewed so that they can do that, particular project. Now, of course, we're not pushing off anything that is urgent, anything that our citizens need at that moment. But they're being very strategic on how to work together and how to use our funds the best way possible.
Well, you have to be, because they were abused for years and years and years. I mean, we spent money all over the place. So no, I understand that, and like I said, I think you've been doing that's definitely like the biggest thing, right? Like public safety, no debt. Like that's kind of like what it takes to have a successful city.
Yeah.
And Lynn Haven is flourishing a lot. So every candidate, when they run for office, because I know you're like halfway into this stint right now. So what are two things that you ran on that you want to see done that you really haven't been able to get to yet?
Two things I ran on that I want to see done and I haven't been able to get to yet. One of those things would certainly be the economic vitality of the city. That has been a challenge because just wrapping our minds around, City of Lynn Haven being economically vibrant, being a city where businesses want to move into.
Yeah.
I think we've done a great job of attracting small businesses, locally owned businesses. I love that. I think that's been very good. But part of our challenge is that we don't have the land to attract, large businesses per se. So why didn't, FedEx come to Lynn Haven?
Yeah.
Or why didn't Academy Sports, come to Lynn Haven? And I think part of that is because as a city, we don't necessarily own the land. And so we've been working, I've been working with the city manager and our economic development director, who's also our CRA director, Mr. Ben Janke, on looking at different parcels that we have within the city that could be owned by a local citizen or someone within Bay County, and then making them aware of the opportunities that could be available with that particular parcel. Like, hey, you have 10 acres here. Here's an idea of something that you might be able to do with that, and then trying to connect them possibly with someone that has a business interest. And so that has been one of the things. Like that has been one of the challenges. Has been the economic vitality. Just how do we get bigger business?
Well, let's talk about that for real quick.
Yeah.
So as a mayor, can you do that? Can you reach out to the person, or does it have to go through the manager and all of that? Can you?
I can reach out to that person. I try to stay out of that, especially when it comes down to something that we'll have to vote on eventually.
Yeah.
Like, hey, here's a development order. Well, the mayor is the one that orchestrated this. So I try to stay out of that. Now I can be. So what I see my role as is I'm the introducer. Not even necessarily the middleman. I'm the guy that says, hey, Ron, I want to introduce you to Ben Janke. So if Ron, if you have an idea about a small business and, hey, what type of incentives do you have in Lynn Haven for businesses? Well, hey, let me introduce you to Mr. Ben Janke, and y'all connect and you all talk about it. That way I'm out of it, because, again, if you come back with an idea that's going to have to come before the commission, I don't want it to seem like, I've done something, inappropriate and trying to attract that business there.
What are some of the incentives like that right now? Because one of the things that I was thinking about, so down there by like Roberts Hall and that area, like, because that's kind of like downtown. Lynn
That would be our
kinda,
downtown
right?
area. Yeah.
And like, it would be cool. And I mean, I don't know how you would make it happen, but like if it turned into like something kind of like a Harrison Avenue that we're seeing right now, where you got.
And that's what we're working on developing. So we have a grant to create Florida Avenue into that, specifically like a Harrison Avenue, where we're going to redo.
Vicky talked about that when it came
Yeah.
on. But like, if right now, like, let's just say I wanted to start a brewery,
Okay.
what incentives would be there for that? And it sounds like, well, and would Lynn Haven be Because Lynn Haven's still a little bit on the Bible, just a little bit more on the Bible Belt side than most of the other surrounding areas. And so it's like something like that. How difficult would it be for someone to come in and start something like a brewery or even like a restaurant? What incentives are out there right now for that?
So let's say, for example, like with a restaurant. So if you were able to go down on Florida Avenue, purchase an existing building, then I believe one of the incentives that we have, because that's in the CRA, so one of the incentives that we would have for that area would actually be like up to a $25,000 grant for a facelift on that building. And so that's one of the incentives that we would have for that as well. Now, if you're a big business, we could possibly talk about tax incentives,
Yeah.
in regards to like ad valorem and such. However, recently there was a business that did not continue to meet their obligation for, you have to stay in business for so long, you have to have so many employees, and then if you back out on that, then you have to basically pay us our taxes for not keeping your end of the bargain on that particular agreement.
Yeah, we talked about it with because the county got screwed on that deal a couple years back. I know you know that whole story. The guy came in, took it, and then he went hunting with the money and all that. But
Yeah.
I was like, I've had this conversation with several people, and they're like, well, they keep doing it wrong. Like, make it to where at the end of the 5 years, we reimburse you the taxes that you paid instead of immediately giving it to you, right off the top. So, but no, yeah, I'm actually. When do you think we'll start seeing Florida Avenue get built up a little bit better?
So right now, just waiting on those grants to come in, and that's the
okay.
challenge. So we have signed off on some. There was some change within the grants that we had to sign off on a few weeks ago, and so that's really what we're waiting on now, which is making sure that those funds come in for that. So hopefully within the next 2 years or so, we'll start seeing some good changes happening on Florida Avenue.
Yeah, of course, Rails to Trails happened under you, which has been. I mean, I ran into you out there.
Yeah.
Running.
I remember that.
I think that's been one of the. I'm an outdoorsy guy, and I'm also, I like physical fitness, and my kids do too, and like that right there, those types of improvements to a community has really been great. Because I mean, we've even run into people we haven't seen in years, and then we've reconnected friendships.
Wow.
Just being on that trail.
Yeah.
Being like, oh, you live here in Lynn Haven now, dude. I moved back 5 years ago. I was in the Army. And you start that back up, and like it has like that improvement to Lynn Haven has been great. It had the same type of thing that everybody's talking about, the path on Beach Drive right now, where they think it's going to be like a homeless destination. There's crime rates going to go up or anything like that. But I have not seen anything like that on Rails and Trails. I think that's one of the greatest things that has come to the area. I want to talk a little bit about the sewage plant, because I know that's really, really big that's going on right now. A lot of citizens I actually don't think know about it because they don't have time to attend the meetings, but we do have a lot of viewers that have asked specifically about that.
Okay.
Because some people knew you were coming on today.
Got it.
So tell us a little bit about this new sewage plant that we potentially might see, or are we going to see it?
So here's what's happening with us. As Lynn Haven continues to grow, as we're continuing to establish new neighborhoods and build new homes, obviously at some point our current sewage plant gets to capacity. We're not at that point yet, so that's not something to be concerned about, right? So we're not at capacity yet. However, and looking forward to the future, it was going to cost us approximately $50 million in order to expand the current sewer plant that we have. And so with that in mind, actually Commissioner Perno brought us a great idea, and we've been following up on that, the city manager, myself, which was to actually contact the county and connect with their plant as it relates to the sewer. And so, of course, we have to get, permission from the state and such to do those different changes. However, that's what we're pushing for right now. So right now we're looking at the feasibility study in order to see, how feasible is this for us? Is it going to be a big cost savings? Obviously, we're not going to have to spend $50 million, right, to connect with them, but there will be some cost for that. But the $50 million was going to have to be another loan. So the debt that we've got ourselves out of, we would go right back into if we were to have to expand that water plant or that sewage plant that's there currently on 5th Street. And so that's what we're in talks about right now. The county's on board with it. And so we're just making our way forward and working through that process. And so we don't necessarily have a definite timeline as to when that's going to be completed. But that is something that we're making progress to, and that will save the city tens of millions of dollars if we're able to connect with the county in regards to our sewer. There might be a slight increase in our water rate or in our sewage rate, but it would certainly be not as significant as it would be if we were to have to go and expand that sewage plant with the $50 million. And then it also gives us an opportunity to do something even better with the Kensaw Park area. We will be able to, transfer that sewage plant and then, repurpose it into something else for the community, like we already do with Kensaw Park. So it's exciting to be able to know that we can actually still meet the needs of our citizens without having to take us into a lot of debt in order to do that. So that's what we're thinking right now, and that's what we're working towards right now, is making that partnership with the county to handle our sewer.
Yeah. So your vision for Lynn Haven being a mayor, once you leave the seat, let's say you don't get elected on this next term, or you got to give it up, or what do you want that you've implemented as far as through the city that you would want the city to keep doing throughout the years for generations to come? I guess I don't want to use the word legacy because I'm sick and freaking tired of hearing that word for obvious reasons. But so we'll just stick to a good benchmark that you have laid on Lynn Haven that you would want to see continue through your leadership that you've kind of done.
And I'll say, hey, Lynn Haven, before I became mayor, was already a great place to live. Obviously, if it wasn't, I wouldn't have been there. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't a great place to live. And so I think one of the things that we've been able to do through my leadership is to really separate ourselves from the other municipalities and, identifying ourselves as the premier city for the Bay County area. And so one of the things that has happened since I've become mayor, working with our city commissioners, our staff, I think our staff and our city manager are really a big part of it because they're the ones that keep us safe. They're the ones that keep the parks clean. They're the ones that make Lynn Haven a great place to live, work, and play, right? And so one of the things I would like to see continue happen is that we would hold our perennial spot as the most family-friendly city in this area. That would also continue to be one of the best destinations to live in the state of Florida. We were one of the top 10 cities that live in the state of Florida since I've become mayor. And so I would like to just continue to see us stay on that path, stay on that target to continue to be a great destination, not for a family vacation, but for family establishment, that Lynn Haven would be that place. And so I would hope that we would continue to provide the various activities that we're providing free of charge so that the families in our city can come together. And it's not just for families. It's for every citizen in our community. So when we have events like concerts in the park, obviously that was something that was going on before I became mayor, but I think we've expanded on it and enhanced that now everyone feels welcome, right? It's not just about, this is a family night out. I see our older adults that are coming out to it. The young children, they come and they play in the park. Golf carts come and they just sit in the, and they just park there along the side of the street. Our food trucks are coming out. And so I think it's those things, just ensuring that, hey, since Hurricane Michael has been so important for our community to have unity, and we've developed that, we've come together, and we've shown that we've been resilient, recovering from everything that was post Hurricane Michael, that we've been a resilient community. So I would just like to see that continue to move forward, that we're a resilient community, that we're continuing to be, again, the number one family-friendly city in Bay County, and at least, one of the top cities to live in the state of Florida.
So I want to talk a little bit about controversial subjects right now. I mean, there's been kind of the elephant that's in the room, and there's a lot of people that are going to be expecting this big blow up. So please don't walk out on me. If there's something that I say, you can say, hey, I don't want to answer, and you're perfectly fine. Let's talk about Ricky Ramy first, the police chief. This has been a huge topic of discussion for, 2 years now? Or a year? A little over a year.
Yeah.
Do you believe that he was held accountable for what he did?
That is a challenging question, right? And everybody has their different opinions about
Yeah.
it. So when the situation first happens, when I'm informed about it, I do go and talk to our city manager about it. I talk to our HR. I talk to our city attorney. I talk to our labor attorney. So I had about 7 hours of conversations those first couple of days. Once I found out what actually took place, and at that point we were I thought it was best to follow the guidance of legal advice on to how to handle that situation. And so, and as a commission, for the majority of us believe that was hey, let's follow the legal advice on how to address this situation. When it comes to, accountability, Chief Ramy was suspended for 25 days without pay.
That's a big deal in today's economy. I know a lot of people are like, oh, he's been in that seat. He's got plenty of money in the bank but it's like, guys, like 25 days. I mean, you start talking about taking a month off. I couldn't afford to take a month off from work.
I can't afford that either. And so when it comes to accountability,
what was the reasoning behind it though? Because and I'm going to bring this up because listen, I've heard all the narratives and I've heard everybody's opinion, but so this is the way that I see it. This man got in his vehicle on his own personal time where he was not, and I get it, there's the ethics thing there where he's the city police chief and how he shouldn't be doing whatever, but he struck a vehicle, he left, thought that he left his information because he was probably frazzled that he hit a car. And then, whatever that story may be, none of this really had anything to do with Lynn Haven. Not a single bit of it. It literally had, I get it. It doesn't look good leaving a bar at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. or whatever time it was. I understand. And listen, we're both veterans. So if I'm leaving the bar at 4 a.m, I'm not driving. I'm catching an Uber or whatever. But I know that there were some other things that were involved with that, and they came out through, then it's all public record or whatever. But the thing about it is I'm almost kind of on the fence about how Lynn Haven treated him with the 25-day suspension, because I don't even know if that was not trying to take his side, but I don't know if that was right. Because if I work for the government while I'm a contractor. So if I go out and I get in my car and the same thing happens to me and my employer wants to deck my pay for that, we're going to have words, because that's not okay with me. I get it because he's the police chief. So, but I feel like that was, that punishment was a little overboard a little bit, because it's dude, he wasn't even on duty. He wasn't representing the city when that happened. That dude that his car got hit, he didn't know that was he didn't know that was the city police chief. But I understand the ethics side of it. But does that sound reasonable the way that I'm looking at it?
Well, I do understand your perspective. And we did have those discussions, how many days, are justifiable in regards to, punishment. And as you mentioned earlier, accountability. And so seemingly, that's what we settled on, was the 25 days. Now, as a commission, we didn't vote on that, but we were, in agreement with that. And the labor attorney, because everything was ran by the labor attorney and our city attorney, to ensure that we're not out of bounds, on what we're doing or how we address that issue, because it is a person's career, that is at stake at the same time, and their character and their reputation. And so you want to be careful how you handle those particular issues. And so it was a challenging issue. It was real challenging, especially from the court side of things. Obviously, we don't have any input as to what the court does or does not do. But waiting on the court to resolve the issue so that we can make a decision, or so that our city could make a decision. That was sort of the challenging part for that, is waiting on that decision to be made, because you can't push along, the judicial system, although, you want the right to a speedy trial. And I think, things did resolve themselves, as quick as they could, but there were so many extenuating circumstances where you just didn't want, any bias to be shown in that situation. So even local officials recused themselves. And so we had to wait on the governor's assignment for that particular case in order that we might be able to get, some resolution to it. And so it was just a challenging time. I'm glad that we got that behind us now,
Yeah.
and that we are able to look forward and move forward. Of course, as you know, that we've just been reaccredited. As a city, our city police department has been reaccredited, so that's a big boost for our guys. And one of the things I did during that time is I would just talk to our officers,
Yeah.
the ones I saw around the way, and just ask them how they were doing and how was the morale, and so they were excited to still be a part of the city of Lynn Haven, and so I'm glad about that. That our police force is still strong. We didn't, as you mentioned earlier, we didn't lose any safety points from that, and so our city has actually become safer over the past 6 months, and so we're just really excited about that.
This
And
is a personal issue, and I come from a military stance on things because I get it. We got conduct unbecoming of somebody, losing rank or even losing your job because of something. But the police force is not the United States military, so they don't work that way. They can quit anytime they want. And they don't have a contract where it says your butt's owned by Uncle Sam. So, as far as that goes, I mean, I am happy that he was held accountable for something because I do believe that there needed to be a punishment there. But again, it's like take and pay, and it really had nothing to do with the city. But, you said something a second ago when we talked about waiting. You guys had to wait throughout all of that. And there was a lot of false narratives that were out there against the city of Lynn Haven because one of my best friends that sits up there ran me through it one night on how it works. No, you can't just go and start voting and trying to get rid of people. It does not work that way.
yeah,
And so, but through that whole fiasco that was going on, and there was a lot of that friction between you and Jamie. And it's kind of funny. Before I ran for office, I thought that everybody that sat up on a dais or sat up, on the podium, I thought that they were all like they all get along, like they all.
Yeah.
And then you have this, and maybe it was just my immature mindset where I'm like, they're all friends up there, so because everybody wants to see the city. Or the county or whatever, that you want to see them succeed, and you kind of put your trust in these individuals that are up there. But this conflict that went on between you and Jamie, and I really think as a citizen of Lynn Haven, I wasn't happy with Jamie for beating a dead horse after he had already been told, especially by the attorney and by multiple people. I mean, he did his own research. Multiple people told him, hey, kind of wait for the court system to do it. I also didn't agree with you. I think that a couple of those meetings were they were pretty bad. But something that I kind of have hated, because Jamie has been treated like trash because of how he handled certain situations. But I don't think he got it as bad as you did, because, and I get it, you were a little bit more boisterous than he was, but these things that have been coming out, you got a local guy that's coming out and talking about how you treat your wife, hear about these Facebook pages that talk about your kids. A lot of people get upset about your demeanor on how you've acted several ways, but you're flesh and blood just like everybody else. And, keeping a clear head. A lot of people, they like to look at military dudes, guys that have like combat training and stuff like that. Like they're always have their head on a swivel, and they're always, toned into something. Right. And it's like, no, actually, that's not it at all. It's people have emotions based on whatever's, going on. Like I can conduct myself in a very, very professional way.
Yeah.
But again, like I said earlier, if you can only beat a dog for so long before it bites back at you. And I think that it's very, very important. I'm not saying to agree with you, because there's a lot of stuff I do not agree with you on.
Yeah.
But to be able to see that you're human and being ousted for like, you have a lot going on. It's not like you just go up there and you're just the mayor. You're trying to take care of the people and trying to take care of your family at home. you're a minister at a church. You got your flock that's there. You've got your hands in all these other buckets. And then you got people that are just sitting there talking trash about you. And then they go, how do you do it? But what I was going to ask you was about all of that. Just so the viewers know, because we have a lot of viewers that are in Lynn Haven, is there anything that you would want to apologize for? And I know you kind of have already done it on some platforms.
Right.
But like, was there anything in particular you think that you could have done better?
I guess in that moment, I guess if you're referring like to the last couple of meetings where
Whichever one.
where I was talking with Jamie, and asking him about a question that was asked him a question in regards to a statement that was made during public commentary. Could I have waited until later on to talk with him about it? I could have. I chose not to because I thought it was something, since it was a public statement that was made, that we should address it publicly, so that the public can know that, hey, we've moved forward, since then. In regards to our disagreements on how to handle the Ricky Ramy situation, him and I have talked about that a couple of times. My position on that was we want to protect the city. And so we don't want to put the city in a position where we can get a lawsuit. So what happens is, and him and I've talked about this with our lawyer present so that we could all get clarification. Anything that we say from the dais can be pulled for courtroom use without, we don't have to get subpoenaed, and they can just take 5 words that you said and now use it as part of their defense. And then you're not getting to come and sit on the stand to talk about why you said what you said.
They already have it.
They already have it. And so knowing that, I didn't want us to say things that would imply that we were trying to force the city manager to terminate Ricky Ramy. And then if he's terminated, but then the case comes back to where he's not guilty but he's been terminated, now we're held liable, although the city manager is the one that, forced that, the one that actually took that action. If it was from us, in some sense, trying to intimidate her to do that, or whatever it could have been, then we could be held liable and be in that situation as well. So that's where my disagreement with him wasn't, and I've told him, I said, hey, if you want to tell the city manager anything, call her, go and meet with her. Certainly not saying, hey, trying to sequester what you're saying or censor what you're saying, but let's be careful with what we say because it's all on public record. And then obviously when it's on public record, then that can be used against us and it can be used against the city. And so that was my reasoning behind the disagreements that him and I had on how to handle the situation with Chief Ramy. And then also just making sure that we ourselves, that we stay out of it, right? We don't want to, again, we don't want it to be any way seemingly that there was any type of influence from the commission on how a decision was made. Right. And so we just want to let the courts do their jobs. And then once those, obviously it was a waiting game, but once the court gave their decision on it.
What would have happened? I know I interrupted you, but because, so Ricky, he was found not guilty, whatever the charge was. Like, he was found not guilty. So if you guys would have fired him, let's just pretend, let's play the game. If Vicky would have fired him, he would have had a case to come back and sue the city?
Yes.
How much do you think that would have been? Just
so
I'm sure you already have the number in your mind how much it was going to be.
Approximately, let's give Chief Ramy use a fictitious number. Let's say he has another 12 to 15 years that he could work with us. Yeah. So you're looking at his salary times another 12 to 15 years.
Plus pain and suffering and
the pain and suffering, but you're not also including his retirement and what that could be projected to be, right? So not just the fact that you're going to get this for retirement, but then what is the market going to be and how does that affect your retirement in the next 10, 15, 12 years? So you're looking at, all of the loss that you have as a result of that. And so as I'm sitting there saying, hey, let's not talk about these things. Let's not address these things.
You're saying because he makes close to $100,000, right?
He makes a little over $100,000.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. So if you're doing that plus another 15 years plus retire, and that would have been a lot of money.
You have your COLAs. You also have your
on top of hiring another police chief that's going to make the same amount of money. Wow. Yeah.
So that's where we were. And because there are some cases where I do know where they've used things that we've said in commission meetings. They're trying to use that against us, in different lawsuits. And so it's, hey, let's learn and let's just as we mentioned, being calm, being cool, not being emotional about it. Let's try to do that. So in the end, but even after that, Commissioner working out again, we've met because I think when him and I talked, the challenge to that was miscommunication. Yeah. There was something I thought was communicated to him, but seemingly he didn't get that word because obviously, we're doing our best. Well, we're not violating sunshine. Yeah. So assumingly I thought something was communicated to him how we wanted to try to handle these matters during commission meetings, but seemingly that wasn't communicated with him. And so what I initially perceived was, okay, hey, I thought this is how we're going to handle it, but seemingly he's taking a different approach to it. So how do we try to get back on the same page and try to handle it in a way that would alleviate us from any type of responsibility as a city in regards to what decisions the city manager makes. And so, but since that time, we've talked about it a few times, just to communicate, hey, this is what I was thinking, this is what he was thinking, and just move forward from that.
Yeah, and it looks like you guys pretty much have. I know that I guess this past meeting, it was a little rough, but again, it's one of those things where it's so funny because the same people that sit there and they point a finger at a mayor and they say, "Oh, should be professional at all times. Don't talk down to the people." Well, it's the same person that you elected to be president. And the dude flat out yelled from the stage and said, "Hey, punch that person in the mouth because I don't like what they're saying." You're not doing anything like that. You called out somebody. You said, "Hey, listen, this is one of your supporters that's up here talking." So, I mean, I understand the question. Did seem a little bad, but I understood what was going on as far as that goes because there have been, I don't like how either one of you guys have to deal with this. Yeah,
and my point in asking that question is sort of being a little dogmatic about it. Again, could I have let it go? I could have. Is that I wanted people to know that, hey, him and I have met, we've talked, and there is no angst between us. There is no, hey, I hate Jamie Warrick. There is no, let me try to get, Commissioner Warrick or whatever he brings to the commission, let me be anti-Jamie.
Yeah, Jamie was all for you when you ran.
Yeah, I
mean, and he's always been in support of you until this thing came up, and I mean, it was just a hill that he wanted to fight on, and so, which I mean, I get it. Once you're strong-willed about something, I mean, you stay on it and the consistency. But I mean.
Yeah, and and of course, all of us have our opinions and our expressions on how we want to handle that. And I told him that, hey, I'm not saying that you're wrong for your opinion about what we should do with Chief Ramy or what should have been the outcome of his employment. So as him and I talked about it, it wasn't me disagreeing with him on the outcome of the employment as much as let's be tactful in how we approach and how we discuss these matters, so that again, if it turns out where it's unfavorable for Chief Ramy, then we're not part of that, part of that equation as to why it turned out the way that it did, that we want to, alleviate ourselves from that as much as possible. But yeah, so him and I've had some conversations about it. Even more recently, we met probably about 60 minutes to 90 minutes after that meeting, again, to discuss, anything that needed to be discussed between us with the lawyer present to make sure that we didn't violate anything, so that we can just continue to work together and move the city forward. I think he brings a lot of good stuff to the table for the city of Lynn Haven, and I tell him that. He really digs into things and brings, various aspects of data. And I think all of our commissioners bring a good approach as to how we should see things. And I think that's why you all elected us, so that we wouldn't be robots and we wouldn't be monolithic in our thinking, that we all bring a strength, to the commission and a perspective from the various citizens, so that we can address those things and talk about those things and have a good viewpoint. So not only do I appreciate what he brings to the table, all of our commissioners, whether it's Commissioner Perno.
Well, I like what you guys have been doing. I've seen several meetings now where there's dialogue. And I like seeing that when I go to a meeting, not for the entertainment aspect, but just to know that my city officials are talking things out. Because and I get it, you guys have a pre-commission meeting where that's where a lot of that talk comes into play. Yeah. And it is, sometimes I have to remind myself that, because I'll go to a meeting and be like, they didn't talk about that at all. They just sat there and I'm like, oh, they had it. And then Sam will be like, we talked about that in the pre-commission meeting. Like, we pretty much, because a lot of that stuff you guys already know. I'm gonna redirect a little bit, going back onto another. And this is going to be a weird one for you, but it might not be. We talked about the debt earlier.
Yeah.
Talked about how the city of Lynn Haven was in it was a massive amount of debt. Like, we know where that debt came from. Because I think our in my opinion, just based on things that I've seen and I've heard, but have been, we had a very irresponsible mayor that just kind of went around swiping a credit card on everything. But my question to you is going to be, what do you think one of the biggest pieces of debt that we had that you kind of adopted when you came in, and how hard it is to actually fix whatever has already been done by the previous mayor? Like, is there anything in particular that kind of hits your mind?
I think one of the particular pieces of debt that that we wanted to address was the $4+ million worth of debt that we just paid off recently. When I did sit down with the debt review committee, that was going to be our longest, outstanding debt. Was going to be that debt. We're going to be paying that until 2047.
And who was that? That was with
James Finch. And so whenever he completed the 17th Street ditch project, there was he financed that project, and the city voted on that. The commissioners, I think it was a 5-0 vote, voted to approve that financing of that. But that was for a 30-year loan, right?
Would you have done that? Would you have been in favor of that?
Probably not.
I know that it's in the past, but I'm just curious on if you would be for something like that.
Considering that we have different, relationships, we have very good relationships with, various local banks such as Hancock, Whitney, Cadence Bank. I think you would try to want to go through a bank for that, or there's even state funding that we could try to do, with that. So I think you just try to follow the protocols that you've already put in place before, in regards to how to use.
Because this is the first time that I've ever heard something like that. So I knew that it was with James. So I know I played stupid, but I knew it was with him. But the thing about it is, like, have you ever heard of maybe I'm young, I'm 34, and I'm just now getting my head wrapped around politics, but have you ever heard of have you ever heard of a city borrowing that kind of money from somebody before?
So that's not common. I do know even our, I believe it was also even our accounting firms, the firms that come in and do our accounting for us, and also I don't think that they were familiar with that concept either. So that was a challenge, but withstanding the personality, it was just looking at, we're going to be paying on this debt till 2047, and so and when you look at the life of the loan and how much you're paying in interest, how can we pay this off faster and then actually cut down on how long we're going to be in debt, at least an enormous amount of debt as a city. And so that was a little over $21,000 a month payment that we were making. And you're looking at paying $21,000 a month through 2047. So I think that was one of the things that we wanted to alleviate. Alleviate. Again, not so much because of the personality in which was holding the loan, as much as does it make sense for us as a city when we're talking about being fiscally responsible to knock off those debts, right? So this is our longest standing debt at 2047. If we can cut that down, so now, we're, by paying that off, we've almost paid off nearly half of the debt that we've had, when our city manager first took her position. So it's been a strategic plan to continue to pay those things off, as opposed to having to refund certain loans and such. So I think we've been doing a good job of knocking those things out.
We pretty much went over all the hot subjects and all the hot buttons. Is there anything that you think our listeners need to know about you? Maybe something that we didn't talk about? Sports teams.
Well, I guess with you thought I was a Miami Dolphins fan earlier.
He came in wearing where's your hat? The Mosley Dolphins hat, and then the shirt that came on. I was like, I like the Miami Dolphins. I didn't even. That's awesome. Do you help out with Mosley at all, or?
So I try to attend as many Mosley events as I can. Matter of fact, even yesterday I was able to attend their honor ceremony for their freshman class, and it was 430 freshmen that received an honor for a 3.0 or higher GPA for the first semester at Mosley. So I'm very proud of what we're able to do, at Mosley High School and North Bay. They do a great job at North Bay Haven too. So We have two great schools right here in the city of Lynn Haven. So, yeah, I was a mentor at Mosley when I first became mayor, so I was doing some mentoring over there. But now I just try to support where I can and go to as many athletic events, as I can. Matter of fact, tonight when I leave you, I'm going to support the softball team over at Rodeos. My daughter plays softball for Mosley High, so we're going over to have a family dinner at Rodeos because it's part of their fundraiser night for that. So looking forward to that as well. But so yeah, I guess in regards to sports teams, I mean, I am a sports advocate, so I'm a New Orleans Saints fan. I went to seminary in New Orleans, so it's hard to go to seminary in New Orleans and not become a New Orleans Saints fan. So I'm a New Orleans Saints fan. I guess when it comes to basketball, I do like the New Orleans Pelicans, only because when you go to a New Orleans game, every other NBA team is coming through. So you get a chance to watch them, but I also like the San Antonio Spurs because they're a team-oriented sport. With baseball, I'm a Braves fan.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a Braves fan.
Oh, yeah. You listen to Sam's podcast at all?
I get a chance to check in on it.
Yeah, man, he's really on that stuff. Like,
So-
he took me and my son to my son's first baseball game last year on my birthday.
Yeah.
And we got to go with him, and but man, sitting and watching a Braves game with him is like sitting with like an encyclopedia.
Oh, wow.
He just sits there. He knows all the players. He knows their stats. He knows and he's like sitting there telling, like, dude, I just want to watch the game.
Yeah.
Like, and so
Now, my favorite baseball team is actually a minor league team, the Montgomery Biscuits. So that's
the
my favorite.
Montgomery Biscuits.
Montgomery Biscuits. Yeah, I went to college in Montgomery, Alabama, at Alabama State University. Graduated from Selby University, and my wife's from Montgomery. And so while I was in Montgomery, that's when they actually started that team. It's a AA minor league team. They actually play against the Pensacola Wahoos, the Birmingham Barons. And so while we were there, that's when they established the team, and that's when they also picked the name. So I think it was like people turning in names to the news station.
Yeah.
And so, initially when they called them the Biscuits, you actually go to the game. And at that time, when the team first started, they would actually shoot out biscuits into the stands,
What?
like frozen biscuits. And
Only in Alabama could you get away with that, I think.
only, man, only. But that is my favorite baseball team is the Montgomery Biscuits. I love to take my kids to those games, in the minor league baseball. And they're a farm team for the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. So when it comes to the American League, I do like, the Tampa Bay Devil Rays since they're connected to the Montgomery Biscuits. So it's fun to watch as well.
Yeah. I appreciate you coming on, and you're always welcome to come back on and talk about anything that's going on with
Well,
Lynn
thank
Haven.
you, man. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and share with the citizens in Lynn Haven. Appreciate what you're doing for getting
Thank
the news
you.
out.
Yes, sir.